time around, I'm going to recommend you head over to the Native Instruments Reaktor User Library and download everything by Chet Singer, because his instruments are absolutely among the best instruments that I've tried for this setup with a MIDI guitar or a standard guitar with the MIDI guitar software together with the breath controller. I'm going to start off with an example with a tenor sax here. And I also have in the background, I have Audio's Sax Fury. I use the key noises from that particular library. The things that I'm looking at here are the ways the note separates as I'm playing, the ways that I am able to play staccato going into legato stuff, and the way that I can jump off notes and have easy access to these grunts, squeaks and squeals. If you're new to this, Reaktor, is it really hard to work with? I mean, I really didn't have an idea because I haven't worked much with Reaktor before. I've done some small things with it, but I've always found it a bit cumbersome actually. But as it turned out, this was really the most pleasant installation I've done in a while too. On top of that, it's free. So here you have Reaktor, and also this is what Silverwood Tenor Sax file looks like from the Native Instruments page. I have this newfound interest in Reaktor, so I've actually created an extra folder, and inside there I put all my downloaded Chet Singer instruments. There will probably be more now that I've acquainted myself with the Reaktor environment again. What are the things that I immediately done something about? Because this is a patch that I've done and saved. So the first thing I did was to go to Modulation Busses here. And you have something called source and you have something called destination, and it's kind of self-explanatory, I think. But pitch bend up, that would be the pitch bend coming from, in this case, my guitar, or if you have a pitch bend wheel on your controller, whatever, that's the pitch bend up, my bending up. And if I bend up 2 semitones, I want that to translate into a coarse pitch in their case for the same amount. So I have to, of course, set my MIDI guitar software to pitch bend range of 2 if I'm going to use this setting. The next modulation I did is, of course, to use pitch bend down the same amount, so I get this symmetry going. That was the only thing I sort of made any changes to. You have lungs, you have reed, and you have bore. So there's no craziness going on here. Perhaps for the aperture in the the reed setting, that's on the extreme in my case. And I also like noise everywhere since I do these solo performance stuff. So I like noise, key noises, all kind of breath noises. If I can get some lip buzz and stuff like this, which you will see in the coming instruments, I also opt for those if they're available. You have a growl here, a slight growl here that's on permanently. I was thinking of doing some ferro sander stuff, and then of course the growl or flutter would go up a bit, but I'm not using any vibrato or flutter in this case. So this is just like a bass growl grittiness to the note or to the tone. You have the choice between breath and wind. I've found that the wind settings are the ones that I would associate with full control using my breath controller. Also a transposer, if I want to go up into the altissimo register for the tenor sax. The only thing I actually did something about with the tenor saxophone was evening out the pitch band ranges, so that I match my MIDI guitar software. And I did some settings for the models, playing around, got to a place where I felt this is what I want it to sound like. This is mainly what the setting up of the Silverwood Tenor Sax is. Let's go on to a flute, because there are some interesting settings in the Silverwood flute as well. Let's look at the Silverwood flute. Here it is, and the same thing goes as with the saxophone, of course. The first things I would do in the modulation buses here is going for source, pitch bend up for coarse pitch, and down the same. So I match it to my MIDI guitar software. Whatever pitch bend range I have there, I should have here as well. People often use the vibrato on the software. I'm not too keen on that, but it sounds nice in this case. But as you see, I tend to want to play my own vibrato, so I usually have this turned off. We have lungs, noise, mouth, and bore here. Beyond the mapping of the pitch bend ranges, we come into something like a mouth register and noise amount. These are two things that I added for this flute specifically. They're off right now, so if I turn this on, you see that it says foot controller here, and that's associated to my bite function on the breath controller. So this sends out CC4 when I bite down on it. So you hear this sound of air or this breathy noise, and the amount of that you set how much you want to come through with this simple value here. This mouth register part is even more interesting for a guy like me who likes Eric Dolphin special effects with flute. Listen to this. I have this set, of course, to bite function as well, so I'm controlling both breath noises and mouth register with the bite function here. This is one of my favorite functions with this flute. Chet Singer has done a beautiful job also with this one. So when looking at the next instrument, which would be the Silverwood clarinet here, it kind of looks a bit different. You would recognize some of the categories. We have source and destination, so we know that it has to do with pairing input to output. We have MIDI 1, MIDI 2, up to MIDI 6, so that would be 6 different ways of pairing some source to some destination if we want to. We have these 2 different categories, obviously. We have pitch plus and we have pitch minus, so it's pitch bend up and pitch bend down. Again, 0 to 2 is what I'm looking at, or to match my MIDI guitar software that says pitch bend range 2. So if I want pitch bend down, I have to choose another of these 6 categories. I'll choose the MIDI 1. If I put that to pitch bend pitch minus, set that to note, and set it to -2, I can bend it 2 semitones down now. I had my bite sensor on this breath controller set to foot pedal, so this sends out CC4. And I can of course use this bite sensor to affect the register, just like I did with the flute. But I found a pretty interesting function working with this. If I choose, say, the pitch bend. If I don't want to use my pitch bend on my guitar for any reason, say I have some rheumatic problems, I have some problems with my joints or whatever, I might want to use a breath controller instead. It's all about how you set these parameters up together with whatever associations you do here from source to destination. But it's a beautifully sounding instrument in its own right. And if you want a free clarinet that sounds and plays fantastic, I guess go no further than to download the Silverwood clarinet as well. So if we move over into the brass part of these Reaktor instruments by Chet Singer, the most recent thing he's done is the Beauchamp Brass. It departs from the earlier instrument in that it is sample-based. It does not work as well for some DAWs. I think Reaper was affected, pretty long loading times and stuff like this. I've been comparing the Beauchamp Brass to his earlier venture into brass, which was Dannenberg Brass, like this. And they're pretty much the same from my perspective. The difference being that the Beauchamp Brass is 1.6 gigabytes, which is pretty hefty for me, considering I want to use these small fingerprint instruments, and this sound as great as the latter one does for me. So I'll be focusing on the Dannenberg Brass here. Let's start here with Flugelhorn, for instance. The first thing I see is that the pitch bends are set to +3 and -1. I want both to be +2 and -2 so that they match my pitch bend range of my MIDI guitar. Otherwise, I'll get some sort of mismatch in terms of how much I bend each way. Let's listen to what it means for me to change this type of input. I told you before that the wind input alternative is better for me with this sort of setup. Just choosing the breath instead. It seems to not release as I release, and that is immediately taken care of as I choose the wind controller alternative. I'll up the breath noise to get some sort of life into the picture here. I can change back to some studio reverb instead, so we at least hear the changes. Vibrato is obviously something that I choose not to use. Flutter is also some sort of effect. Of course, I can use it as an effect sometimes, but I would have it on perhaps a pedal or something, so I can use that as an effect. Sizzle, on the other hand, is pretty important to get some brass instruments come to life. You have the amount, you have grit, and you have sizzle when loud. When should the effect take place? In this setting, it's going to be affecting practically the whole range, I think. This is obviously too much, but you hear what it is. So for the Flugelhorn, I wouldn't use this sizzle that much, because that's not an effect that I would want to come through unless I sort of blow at the absolute maximum. This would probably be a responsible setting, I think. Whereas on stuff like the trombone, I think that it's more applicable over a larger dynamic span. Formant shifts, going from nasal to more open and stuff like this, and it gives the instrument some sort of personality. There you have the mutes, and I think you have the same options for all these instruments, but it's not applicable in the same way, I think, to all instruments. This is up to you to decide where to use or not. And I won't go over all these instruments, but I will show you a special case that I have with regard to pitch bend and the trombone. Using a fretless instrument as a controller makes differences for how you set the pitch bends, because bending a note is exactly the same as sliding a note in that regard. And if I want to be able to use the full neck as a controller and have a slide go from the very low end to the highest part of the I must make changes to the pitch bend range as well. And I must set it to, which is the maximum for this software, 24, because I have 24 frets usually on my guitar. But I must also switch to 24 on my MIDI Guitar software. And since I don't have that option in MIDI Guitar 2, I'm now using MIDI Guitar 3 for this example. Otherwise, I have been using MIDI Guitar 2 for the major part of this video. Now it's totally possible to use the full length of the neck as a controller as well. But I wanted to show you how easy it is to sort of set the stage to be able to use also a fretless controller. For instruments like double bass or for instruments like trombone that has these sort of smooth bends at the heart of their sound, this is probably the absolute best solution. So what would happen if I have a pitch bend range at 2 and I set it to 2 both in the Dannenberg Brass here and MIDI Guitar software. Any sort of glide will at least be symmetrical in that sense. If I move a semitone on the neck, you also hear a semitone move in the synth. Both up and down, of course. But since I've set it to 2, it will stop after a maximum of 2 semitones movement. It will only start working again once the note is sort of released and start over. So if you know for a certainty that you're not going to use anything bigger than a 5 semitone glide anywhere, you might as well put it to 5 and match it in the MIDI Guitar software if you want that. But better to use the full neck, match that value to the controller, and be able to use the full instrument to that effect if you want to. This is what I wanted to show you with this trombone stuff. Now, does it sound nice? Yeah, it does. I think here's where Sizzle sort of shines as well. I think you see where I'm going with this. This is probably where I would use this Sizzle settings the most for these kind of instruments. But it sounds, these instruments in the Dannenberg Brass are all very, very nice instruments to work with. So in case you haven't already gone out and bought some brass ensemble that you have, and you also have a Reaktor, of course, pop on over to the Reaktor community page and download these instruments because they're really, really great instruments. So until later, see you next time, and hope you got something out of this. And yeah, bye.